Welcome back to the Best Advice podcast. Today we are joined by Peter Warren. How are you going, Peter?
I'm great, gents. Good to be with you.
Fantastic. Let's jump straight in. Peter, what is the best advice you've ever received, heard?
I've been given lots of advice over the years, probably like everyone, and I've probably been quite selective in what I've listened to and what I've absorbed. But I'll tell you the one that's probably served me the best over the last probably the last 8 years. It's from my dad, actually, and I was going through some challenging business decisions about a decade ago. And it's my business partner as well. And he sat us down, both of us, actually once, and said, gents, it took me 50 years to work this out, but please don't ever do anything for someone else's reasons. And that's really held us in good stead. And actually, as literally as last night, late as last night, I had a long chat with Aaron, my business partner, and he said that exact thing to me. He said, remember what your dad used to say? So, yeah, really top of mind. So, and look, that's not to imply don't be generous, don't have a spirit of giving. But I suppose if you are going to do things for other people's reasons, go in with that mindset that you're actually doing it for someone else's reasons, not yours. So therefore, calibrate your expectations accordingly.
And another way, when you say that, I think of the concept of just being able to firstly know your own reasons. Otherwise, because if you don't know your own reasons, then you default to somebody else's.
I've noticed this common thread with a lot of people in our industry, I suppose, who I think fundamentally you get in this industry because you like helping people. Like, why would you do it otherwise? Like, there's probably other better ways to make a living, to be honest, or less stressful ways to make a living. But I don't care whether you're an advisor or a paraplanner or running a dealer group or all these things. I think you fundamentally start this field because you like people and you like helping people. I guess the downside of that is you become a people pleaser and you end up doing a lot of things for other people's reasons and maybe selling yourself short a little bit along the way. So I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. I do fall into the traps all the time. But it's definitely advice which has probably held me in good stead. And probably to your point, Fraser, it's about getting absolute clarity on what your reasons are and anchoring to that.
I have noticed over the years in our interactions, you living that. I've probably asked some stupid questions at times or often stupid advice. And you've either ignored me or pushed me in the right direction, which has always been incredibly useful and spot on. So are there particular events and decisions and things that you've made in your business that you look back on and go, I'm glad I did do things for these reasons?
Yeah, I mean, really early doors. So when Aaron and I set up Finura, we had lots of sort of initial approaches from people who, and was always in the spirit of, let's do something together, let's collaborate. Oh, we'd like to invest maybe. What do you think? And you always indulge those things because you never know what the possibilities are and it's flattering and all those things. But often when you sort of peel back the onion on what people were looking to do, they weren't doing it for our reasons. They weren't doing it because they believed in Finura. They were doing it because they actually wanted something for themselves. And that's not a criticism. It's just the reality. And so what I found was I'd get halfway through some of these processes and I'd sort of stop myself and go, hang on a sec, we're compromising or almost bargaining our way through stuff which is pretty contradictory to our values. We're doing this for their reasons all of a sudden, not theirs. Another extension of that, I suppose, comes back to some commercial decisions we've made along the way. So we've had to make some tough decisions about commercial partnerships and what we will and won't do, and set some rules, and it's probably cost us business, I think, at the end of the day. But we sort of decided early doors that it wasn't our role to fix someone else's business model problem. So what I mean by that is that we all have problems with our businesses. Like we've got plenty of our own. But if we make it our sole purpose and all our actions are based on solving someone else's business model problems, it will completely stuff ours. And then all of a sudden their problems become our problems as well. So an example of that could be, let's say we're building some software and a dealer group says, we think we should get 30% of all your revenue. And like, well, that's good for you. That might solve a business problem for you, but that probably doesn't help our customers too well. You know, now I can see how you could fall into that trap because someone might promise you all these sales and all this distribution and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, that's not, and I also feel that often if those things come about, they're not because the other parties necessarily really thought through and come to you with, hey, this is the problem we're trying to solve. What do you think? Like, how can we work together to create a win-win? It's almost, they're looking for a quick fix. And I think you're the salvation. You're the quick fix to solve it all. So, and that can draw you into that sort of thought process where you start becoming that way inclined yourself. So I think that's obviously been just an extension of that to not solve other people. And I think it's different if you're consulting to them, then obviously you have to solve their business model problems. But that's a very different purpose and engagement. It's not a quick fix, and they know that. So I don't know if you guys have experienced these things over the years, but it's the short-term reactive decision-making that I think sells us short a lot of the time.
I think you're, obviously when you're talking, there's a lot of different scenarios that this fits into, right? And you're absolutely right. People will come to you. There could be a collaboration. There could be a win-win. But I guess what you're saying is that you need to make sure you understand what your win is and what your values and alignment is for your reasons. And if you're getting those and they're also getting their win, then that's great. But it's about making sure those scales don't sort of tilt away from your favor so much.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I feel, this industry thrives on partnerships. It really does. And we've got some awesome ones. In fact, some of our best ones are non-commercial at all. They're just based on values alignment and wanting to help each other. And so I think it's a critical piece of the puzzle. And I feel like perhaps a lot of things that are often described as partnerships aren't really. They're just kind of like a rev share or whatever. And that's not really a partnership for me. You want to feel good about it going in, that both sides are going to win out of it. And I would also suggest that, we think we had Finura only really runs the way it does because we have external partners that help us. So as much as other people get us to help them, we have a lot of people to help us. So we have a marketing agency, we have an outsourced CFO, we have outsourced technology development for coding and different things like that. And so we've had a couple of instances actually where those providers who have been perhaps a little less commercial experience than us have put proposals to us that we just know don't make sense commercially for them. Like, how can you price it that cheap? Aaron has this term, suspiciously cheap is the term he uses, which sort of says they're either not experienced enough or they're desperate for business, whatever the case is. And we've actually had a couple of instances where we've gone back and say, hey, you might want to just requote this because we're going to need more of you from what this is worth more, and we don't want to sell you short and have you questioning our bill in 6 months' time. Let's recalibrate. So I feel, and I've said to them, because for me, like, let's say you have a service provider, the worst thing that can happen is they go out of business or they feel financially stressed. So that for me is the win-win, where you go, no, this relationship actually ensures that your commercial model's viable, our model's viable, and we grow together. Yes, there'll be swings and roundabouts and ebbs and flows and all those kind of things. But if our whole industry dynamics is predicated on extracting the maximum value out of the other party all the time, then it kind of spirals. And not to go on a tangent, but you guys have probably seen me write a bit about what's happened to super administration in Australia. Like this relentless drive to push fees down through the procurement process. And look where we're at with super admin in Australia. It is an abomination. It's all owned by offshore private equity. Well, that's an example of that. Procurement departments in large super funds giving zero shits about the commercial viability of the counterparty. and so the rest of it. Sorry, on a tangent there, guys, but you know how I feel about these issues. So that's an example, right, where everyone loses in that scenario. Like everyone, literally, super funds ends up in front of APRA justifying whether admin's so bad. Members get shit experience, and the companies themselves have to sell to private equity and lose their soul.
All to meet a slogan.
I might let the lose your soul one go through to the keeper. Now, I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned obviously that first piece of advice really came from your dad. What was your dad's relationship with you with regards to your relationship with your dad with regards to going into business and taking on some of his tips and advice?
Well, Dad was my first boss, so that was interesting. So Dad was a chartered accountant, and one thing he told me about he never actually had a boss himself. He started his accounting practice when he was 21 in Ireland, I think. So he's never actually worked for anyone. But one thing he said about being an accountant is you get to see how much money people are making and what businesses are working and what aren't working. And he was doing the books for a hardware store in Queensland, in Brisbane and Mount Omni, a Mitre 10 store. And it's like, shit, this is a good business. And And then literally 3 years later, he's the business partner of the owner, and they've opened 4 other stores together. So he was in the hardware business. So I was, 10 years old, and my summer holidays were stacking shelves in the hardware store. I was paid, but he was my boss, and or my boss's boss, I think, from memory. So we always had this interesting relationship where I had to sort of call him Brian at work and Dad at home, and sometimes the lines blurred, and had to ask my dad for a pay rise and all those kind of things. So I guess the dynamic of our relationship for a long time has been very business orientated. I mean, it's there. It's also been personal, but probably more in latter years when I've become a dad and all those things, it's been more of those other things. But early doors, it was always about business. And I learned a lot from him because he, anyone that's sort of aware of the hardware industry would know that, Mitre 10 used to be the dominant player, and then Bunnings came in and literally wiped it out. So Dad pretty much went bankrupt when I was at uni. So to see that business from going from thriving to zero was a really tragic thing for our family. And I saw what it did to his mental health and to our family. But those lessons just echo in my ears about how he treated his staff in the process, how he conducted himself, even how he dealt with my mum, and some things. And even those lessons carried into, my current business decisions. I knew that we nearly lost our family home, which was a quite stressful thing for my mum to contend with. And so when we were setting up Finura and doing everything we were doing, the one assurance I had to give to Catherine, my wife, was, hey, the house is completely out of this. You don't have to worry. That is not going to happen to us. That's my number one golden rule. And Aaron has the same rule too. So I guess, I'm finding all new mistakes to make, but I'm certainly doing my best to honor him by not maybe making the same ones that he made over the years as well.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, because it is people don't know often the backstory around, where people get all that initial advice from, and a lot of those things that you would have heard in the early days around business, around what works and what doesn't, and the relationship with your dad would have been a massive part of that. And so thanks for sharing that. You did mention at the very beginning, one of the first things that you actually said was, I'm a bit selective of what advice I do take on, which is great, because I think people believe that people can just take on advice and it turns out it's not very great. Was there anything that you've ever taken on that wasn't incredible advice, or you thought about it and then went, actually, no, that's not serving me?
I think, I definitely probably had some advice early doors, which was very much anchored to, and it was probably a little bit because of what happened to Dad, actually. I had a corporate career for a long time before being at, starting Finura, and getting to this world. And I was okay at it. I had a good career. I'm grateful for it. I learned a lot, but I was never happy, to be honest with you. I think I'm wired to run my own business, but I think, and the advice I got, and it was a bit from Dad and from my mum a little bit. She saw what happened today and she said, I think you just, why don't you just play a safer bet and have a good corporate career? You could probably make a lot of money and not have any risk. But that wasn't intrinsic to my values. And I probably I did 2 things. I listened to that, but I also sort of didn't listen to the little man inside. He said, you're not happy for a reason, mate. You need to go and do something else. And I suppose, the unintended consequence of that is I probably should have started something much earlier, because it was really hard starting something when I had a mortgage and 2 kids and everything else going on. So this is, I know we're going to talk about advice for the future, but I think, I'm always so incredibly excited for people that start their own business in their 20s, because I just say, oh, gee, that's what I should have done that. So good on you. That's awesome. Yeah, we need more of that. Because the downside risk isn't there. So I guess that's probably a thing, right? But again, I don't know what would have happened differently. It would have taken a lot of gumption to go any other way. But I think I really suppressed those inner things. And I would often probably sort of say, well, why are you unhappy? Why do you not like this job? Why do you not like this company? And there was actually probably nothing wrong with those situations. I just wasn't really wired. I wasn't being my authentic self in those environments.
Is that just reflecting for myself, and starting by myself a lot later, and probably not for reasons that I necessarily planned out. I like being part of a team, and I like having that team element. And admittedly, I'm working for myself, but with clients and often embedded in their teams. But is that working for somebody else's goals, trying to achieve something else versus you doing what you want to achieve, taking your business where you want to go, dealing with your problems. Is that where that tension comes from, or?
I think it's about, it is a little bit about control. I wouldn't say, I'm certainly not 100% on the hook. So I have Aaron, who's my co-director, and we're equal shareholders. So we wear those responsibilities together. And I would say if we didn't have each other, it would be immensely harder. I have so much respect for any solopreneur out there, because who do you talk to when we sort of have each other, right, to talk to, I suppose. So I have that. But what I would say, Ben, is that I would often just probably struggle to align my personal values sometimes to what a big faceless corporation was sort of saying. They were the things. I actually always loved my teams. I had some awesome bosses over the years who I'm still in touch with, who are still in the industry, and many of whom become clients. So those things were always terrific. But even some of those people will privately admit to me they weren't happy either. And some of them now run their own businesses. So I don't think it's unique to me. And I think there is an element that sometimes, no matter how shit something might be, how hard things are, at least if you can look in the mirror and say, no, actually, you can do something about this today. You can solve. There's actually something in your power that you can do to solve this issue. Then there's a comfort in that to an extent if you want to embrace it.
Yeah, I think it also, when you spoke about the first piece of advice, which is really around making sure that you're doing things for your reasons and your values rather than somebody else's. That's probably where their corporate alignment might not sit completely with you. It might be.
Yeah, well, I think, look, every company struggles with this. And even Finura now, we have to, so like we have staff. So I'm really clear in my order of my hierarchy of priorities. So my number one priority is to my team. We have no company without our team. So their happiness and their welfare is my number one concern. And then after that, it's kind of customers, because I know if the team are happy, my clients are really happy. And then the shareholder stuff kind of flows after that, because generally speaking, if those two are working pretty well, the numbers are pretty good. So we just always stay really true to that. I feel big corporate Australia goes the other way. It's very much shareholder dividend, customer, maybe staff kind of the end. And it just feels a bit us about face to an extent. And I don't think we're unique. I reckon every small business, every financial planning business I've met over the years loves their staff. They genuinely do. They're like families, sometimes dysfunctional families, but they are like families. And so this is where small business probably suits people like me a lot more than a large corporate.
Yeah. I think as the business owner, you can have that empowerment to really, really look after your team. That's kind of straight out of the Simon Sinek Infinite Game handbook, isn't it? When you talk about your business, are you talking about your team first, that's
a great book. And that's even a bit to the whole doing things for other people's reasons and the partnership alignment. He talks about finite versus infinite, and how finite's like you win, I lose, and where infinite games are like, no, we're going to have a 50-year relationship. So there's going to be ebbs and flows, but let's make sure that we're still doing business in 50 years. So I love that book. It's a cracker.
Yeah, I like the part where he talks about shareholders being, are they renters or actually are they owners?
Yeah, totally. And I think, and maybe that's the thing too, small businesses are very long-term shareholders. So there's a really different philosophy there. And look, at the end of the day, I suspect, that probably the thing that I would imagine that makes people somewhat cynical in larger organizations probably is that if that truly is how things operate, well, I think you've got to be transparent and own that a little bit. And it is always interesting to me when a CEO comes out and owns that. So I would say the new CEO at ANZ is a good example. He's been pretty direct about the shape of the business. And I don't think anyone should be surprised about what he's doing, because he's basically come in and said just that. Yet he's copped a lot of heat, but ultimately that's what got him the job. So that's what he signed up for.
Yeah, I agree. And the role of the chief executive officer is to really just be the voice, isn't it? And to
pretty much voice of the shareholders. Yep.
I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned the concept of starting your own business and, doing it in younger years when you don't have a lot of commitments. I sort of describe it as starting an apprenticeship. For most people, when you start a business, you've got to go through the first year apprenticeship wage. You're doing all the work and you're getting paid nothing. Or there's plenty of other things you need to spend your money on. Do you have any tips or advice for people that are looking to start their business? And how would you, if someone said they want to start their own business to you today, what tips would you give them?
Well, if you're married, have a very supportive husband or wife. That's probably the first thing. we've made several public acknowledgements that we could never have started Finura without Rachel, Aaron's wife, and Catherine, who kept the financial ship afloat whilst we pursued our ambitions.
Went through the first and second year apprenticeship. Yeah.
Yep. So they paid for the first couple of years of the business, and so we owe them. We will always owe them for that. Hope to pay them back someday. So that's probably the first thing, and it's not even just financial. It's support. Like I feel, engage like if you are partnered, involve your partner in the business plan to an extent, and explain to them what you're doing. I think it's good for you and it's good for them to understand what's happening. Maybe they don't want all the excruciating details, but I feel like having that support of your life partners really critical. I think the second one is another one, is that if you can find someone to do it with, maybe try and find a co-founder or another solopreneur that you can join forces with to an extent. This isn't for any real commercial reason. It's more for a mental health reason, I believe, that having each other, it's like going to the gym, having a spotter, having someone that you've got to be accountable to, I think carries a lot of weight. And I think there will be peaks and troughs, and it's a hell of a lot easier having someone with you for the ride. Because generally I found with my business with Aaron over the years, usually when he's up a bit, I'm down a bit, and it's vice versa. But maybe we just feed off each other and we recalibrate. So I'll sense that, gee, Aaron's a bit cooked. I need to turn up the positivity, and vice versa. So that's probably the second crucial bit of advice that I'd offer, irrespective of what business you want to start.
It's good, isn't it? It's a team sport, both from the home point of view and the business part of the accountability. But I think you mentioned there the accountability person and how important that is. If you are starting by yourself, what are your thoughts about having someone that can hold you accountable, or a coach?
Yeah, well, I think coaches add enormous value, and there's a lot of good ones out there. And those coaching, there's so many, but I'm not going to call out anyone in particular, but I feel that it can form two shapes. It can be a one-on-one coach that you can just work with, who can hold you to account. I'd say choose selectively, like choose someone who, not just someone you like, almost pick someone you don't like. So we have someone that helps us out on the Finura side, and there are times where I can't stand it when he's saying certain
you're
things.
Saying you don't like them, okay?
Yep. But I seriously listen to him. I do now, that's for sure. And that side, but then the other one is I've certainly seen the value in the group coaching environment. So like Del Martin does those ones, and Jim Stackpool and those guys, and so I like those, the one-to-many coaches, because some people. Personally, I'd rather be in a group fitness class than in a personal one-on-one coaching class, because you learn more from everyone else's mistakes. And that's why AA is group therapy, for a reason. So I sort of understand that. So I think even if, and they are probably more affordable too. If you can't afford a one-on-one coach, maybe find a group you can collaborate with. Yeah.
When you said that, the children, when you got kids and like, you're telling one of them off and the other one's like learning so much from the other one, like I'm getting that. They're like,
if it's my kids, they're generally enjoying it. My son loves it when the other one's in trouble. They go, ooh, he's in trouble.
I was going to say that as well. Anytime Lucy's in trouble, Charlie's just going, yeah, keep going.
I've been saying this for years.
And I thought you were saying, group. I mean, you stick yourself in these things, right? I like groups because I can hide in the corner and hope nobody actually asks me a question. And
and it's quite interesting. Like I do, having sat in a few of these or presented to some of these groups, and I really enjoy doing that. I do a lot of it, which are more private engagements. I'll always chip in because I just really love small business owners. They most of them are introverted, Ben, I reckon. That's why they're there. The extroverts, they're at the conference already, and they don't need those group things. They're out all the time. So I would say they're 75% introverted anyway.
Well, I think if you are there to learn something or get something out of it, you kind of need to be slightly introverted anyway. If you're there bolstering and saying, you know everything already, why are you there in the first place?
Yeah, totally.
I think that's right. But equally, it can be hard to ask the questions that you want to ask, and you're just kind of hoping that somebody else will pipe up and ask that specific question. But I'll I work with a coach, and I'm very good friends with him, and I like him a lot, and we mess and stuff. But he will swear at me and call me out on bullshit when I say bullshit, because that's what I pay him for. And so, yes, there is a good relationship that kind of goes around the side of that because I've known him for so long. But when he's coaching, he calls me out on my bullshit and he swears at me, and that's 100% what I need. And then he's always sitting on my shoulder going, like, I know he's there and I know he's going to go, you're not doing that well enough. You need to do better. That's bullshit. Come on. And
yeah,
you know, that's the value for me. I probably don't see him enough. He gets a lot of money for not that many hours, a lot of the year, but the value I get from him sitting here and going, do better.
Even if he's planted seeds in your brain, Ben, or you're just terrified of the conversation you're having with him in 2 weeks' time, if you haven't done these things, there's the value, right? So, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, it's certainly not an hourly rate you're paying a coach for. It's like you said, it's the mental game for them being there the whole time.
Pete, just going back to the team a little bit, and this idea of doing things for your reasons, I'm the kind of person who comes up with a lot of ideas because, you know, I've made a secret. I've got ADHD. My brain goes all over the place. I come up with a million ideas. Every one of them is brilliant and genius. And why the hell can't we do this yesterday and for the rest of our lives? How do you manage a team and trying to keep them on track for what you're looking to do in and what's important for you for the business and where you're going?
So look, my secret weapon is Aaron Satchell, my business partner. So he is Mr. Discipline and Focus.
He's
Yeah.
Very good.
So we have like Slack channels with all sorts of, mate, Ben, you would love our Slack channels, mate. The ideas that pop in there from our team are amazing. The AI channel and the product channel and all these things. And he'll always bring it back. He'll let it play out, conversations, and get the ideas at least they're documented, right? We have them. And they say, guys, we only got 3 developers this month. We've got this, we've got that, and we've got these things we're committed to. These are the things that matter. So I feel and it's in many respects it's a shame, and I've had to maybe just pull him out of that a little bit sometimes because he's actually got a very creative brain and say, mate, you don't have to be that all the time. Like, feel free to, whatever. But I can imagine when he's got a bloke like me along his side, he just has to play that role. So I guess that's my development area, Ben. If I'm honest, I'm not that different to you, mate, on that side. I suppose that's a product of, I guess, all three of us. We're out in the market. We're talking to people all the time. We've got ideas coming at us constantly where maybe some of our colleagues that are a bit more back inward facing don't necessarily get exposed to that. So, but I wouldn't have it any other way, mate. Well, you can't change who you are. That's okay.
That's true.
But I think the discipline, the one good thing we found actually coach with our clients, our consulting clients, they will all say, that we'll have a list of 12 initiatives, technology related, and they go, yeah, they're all great. Let's get on with it. And then Aaron will often jump in and say, guys, you get to pick one for the next 12 months, which is because we think you can do 3, but actually, you know what? It's probably just one. Let's pick one. And that's an awesome exercise. I think if you're getting that, if you've had that pile of things from the week, just try and pick one, mate,
I limit myself to 3 a day. And then,
prioritization piece.
We get one a quarter. So that's our mode. We have one OKR, we call them, like organizational key result. And we have one, we anchor to, and everything's got to fall from that. Everything else drops off.
Yeah. So I have 3 a day and I limit myself to 5 like key goals for the quarter, which to be honest, are mainly client work.
Sure.
There might be one that ends up being something that I want to do, but they're all on paper. But to that point, like I look back on them at the end of the quarter and I go, can't do that. Like that's just stupid. So, I mean, but it's what I need to do.
It's so funny. We're all the same. It's like my business partner does the same thing. Yes. Yep. Put that on the list. Let's prioritize it. Yep. Yeah. And now these other things that were really important last week, are they still important? Yep. Yeah.
I don't even remember what happened last week and why I put that on.
Oh, and we're seeing later. I mean, I think this is you've seen this too. Like with the challenge now with AI, right? All that's done is given those people who are great at starting and not great at finishing an even easier path to get started and actually feel like they're getting that sugar hit of getting something vibe coded or whatever done. But then the follow through is not there. The hard bit is not there. So that's the downside of AI. I think
I described it the other day like everyone's been using a hammer and nails to build fences, and then everyone's just been given a nail gun now, and it was just like woo, running everything to everything. going, look what I've made. But no one's spending any time on the foundations or the actual infrastructure.
It's like SimCity. Remember that game? I used to love that game when I was at school. It's a bit like that now, right? You can just build that city, but you sort of just start without a real plan. That's a bit the same. Yeah.
And then you're cursing yourself when you want to get that skyscraper in and it doesn't fit.
That's right.
Too many roads. Are there other... We're focused on that advice that your dad gave. Are there other bits of advice that have stood out over the years that have layered on top of that?
Yeah, this is probably more a resilience piece, I suppose, around, I love that you're open with your challenges. Like I've had mental health challenges myself, particularly about 10 years ago. I've really got under control now, but I had terrible anxiety issues and a bit of depression. And I think the thing I took out of that, which was a brutal experience to go through, was that learning that nothing is as good or as bad as it seems. And I think particularly when you're in a small business where everything just seems dramatic, like honestly, get a new client, it's celebrations and gifts going everywhere and everyone's happy. And then we lose a client and it's like, okay, we're going out of business. The world's ending. So I feel
so personal. You're like, why me?
Oh, yeah.
What do I do?
And it just so happens now we've been around long enough now. We're starting to get clients come back to us that rejected us in the early days, and I love that because it's sort of like we thought it wasn't about. We thought we would be good for them, but it was just they just weren't ready, and that's totally fine. And you just can't take it personal. There's nothing wrong with your offer or you. Things aren't as bad. There is another side of the equation. You're not across. Stop making it about you. And I think that just is about everything in life, right? Like that nothing is as good as or as bad as it seems. So why is the good part important to anchor to? I think it's about not getting sucked in, not getting FOMO, not getting, just dragged into things that you might. And I've seen this over the years, people who have left really good jobs to join startups and just drunk the Kool-Aid. And you just objectively know it was never going to be probably as good as what it was going to be. But conversely, on the bad side, that things aren't as bad as they probably seem and, all the rest of it. And so I just think, and maybe, I don't know what you guys think, I've gotten better at this with age. I think as you get into your mid-40s, you've probably just been through enough stuff that you can probably do this better. But I do find when I work with some of the younger staff we work with across our clients and even just in my other roles, that's probably the bit of advice I have to anchor to the most, to share, around that stuff as well.
My wife has a saying, and it's probably good advice, just let time be your friend. And sometimes, like the longevity things in the moment are terrible in the moment, but by the time they're a week or 2 weeks old or they're a month old and everybody's moved on, it's no longer the big issue it feels like in the time.
I'm like a lot of people. I've really enjoyed reading a lot of the books about Stoicism, that philosophy, which is really anchored to a lot of mental health therapy, is Stoicism. And there's a great writer called Ryan Holiday. Have you ever heard of his books, The Obstacle is the Way? And so he writes about Stoicism, and he's been writing about it before it became cool and trendy for tech companies to do all this stuff. But I saw him speak in Melbourne, actually. I went with my brother-in-law, and it was great. But and so his latest book, or the writings have actually been about something which is totally very hard to do. I think the hardest thing to do, and the advice is to do nothing. You do not need to respond to every single bit of stimulus or information that comes to you. And so I don't know what you guys think, but I reckon doing nothing is one of the hardest things to do. To say, I'm going to let this sit. I'm not going to do anything with this for a week and see what lands. That's courage.
I guess if you add for now, so do nothing for now, then it's make a little bit more.
Well, the philosophy too is, if you do nothing for now, that's fine. But you may just find in a week that it's irrelevant anyway and you don't need to reflect. Like, I don't know if you guys have had this experience, but you go on holidays and you get all these, you come back, and if you're actually disciplined enough not to look at your email, and how many emails have come through where you get an email and then you get a follow-up email 2 or 3 days later, say, oh, actually, don't worry about it. I figured it out.
The thing I like about that concept of doing nothing is it's a conscious decision to do nothing, right? It's not nothing. It's a decision to do nothing. At the moment.
Yeah. It's not avoidance. I think that's a critical distinction, Fraser. Yeah, avoidance is a different category because I did fall into avoidance. I think that's when I knew I had some mental health issues, when I was actually avoiding stuff and it was causing problems, like literal problems. That's different. No, it's actually saying, I've processed that. I'm going to do nothing with that. I'd love to know other people that have nailed this because I'm still working on it. It's hard.
Well, it's also being respectful of your own time and what you can fit in as well.
I can't go for a walk without a podcast or an audio book on. There's too much going on in my head if I just don't have that little thing.
Yeah.
But I was going to say 2 or 3 days. It's 2 or 3 minutes with me. The email goes back going, actually, don't worry. I think I figured it out now.
Yeah. So for you, maybe for you, Ben, it's just to try for 2 or 3 hours, mate, and see how you go with that as a starting point, potentially.
Yeah, totally. Totally. So you're helping a lot of businesses and I would imagine a lot of people come to you for advice given you're well known. People are enjoying what you do. The articles that you're putting out on a weekly basis. I know myself, I'm getting 4 or 5 times a week from people going, "Did you see what Pete wrote about this week?" And they're from all over the place as well. People that you wouldn't expect. But
yeah, we've got nearly 500 subscribers to that now, so it's amazing how viral. I've got to be careful sometimes what I write.
I would don't, because they're great. I'd suggest there's more people reading it than that, given the way they're pinging around the place. What are people coming to you to to ask questions about, and what sort of advice are you giving them?
It depends on what hat I'm wearing. So I obviously have sort of 2 broad hats. So I obviously, running Finura. And then obviously I'm also a non-exec director of a couple of businesses as well in the advice space. So I probably have different engagements depending on what role I play there. So I'll start with the Finura side, I suppose. Look, I think, obviously, the commercial side of the advice we're giving out a lot now is probably, a lot of it is about AI, to be honest, strategy. What do we invest in? What's the future? What should be backing and not backing? There's sort of big picture things I'd probably suggest at the moment that sort of comes to me. I'm spending a lot of time actually presenting to boards. I didn't think I'd be doing that, but I do get asked to present to boards, like ASX boards even. And I actually really enjoy it, because firstly, I love that they're curious about our space. So, and I see these are boards that maybe aren't directly related to fin services. They're often adjacent, potentially. So I love they're curious. Like I've actually learned, I must admit, I presented to a board 3 or 4 weeks ago. I won't mention who they were, but one of the directors there is a billionaire. And I got more questions from him than I've ever had from anyone. And they were simple questions with complex answers, And I've just found, recently that as I get to meet more of those people, that they've just got more intellectual curiosity than I would get from other corners of the industry who probably think they know it all. So I think that's what happens when you get huge technology shifts or big shifts happening. The people who are humble and creative and have built businesses and done really cool things get really, really curious, and they're trying to absorb as much information as humanly possible about that. In terms of, if I bring it down more to the client level at the practice side of things, a lot of them are reaching out to us, and Danny and Simon and my team are probably better placed to answer this, but a lot of it probably starts as an AI conversation. I'd say, we've tried this, it hasn't worked, what's going on? And then you peel it all back, as you know, Ben, and there's just a ton of other issues that are unrelated to AI, and no amount of AI is going to solve that there and then. So I think the thing I like about, though, is that often you just need to get the invitation to come in and talk. You need them to be open and ready to receive some guidance. And often I find the best people are the ones that have tried something themselves. They've had a crack, it has worked out. It's like the home renovator, to the bloke who's been to Bunnings 4 times on a Saturday, and it's 6:30 on Saturday night, and I'm still going on something. I'd love to talk to a tradie at that point. So I'm finding that's changed the whole nature of our business a lot.
One of my mates is a tradie, and he says the same thing. It takes longer to fix up the crap and then build it properly than it does just to build it properly.
Yeah, our software developers will tell you that. We're getting a lot of people coming to us with half-baked sort of vibe-coded products and say, right, I'm ready to, here's all the code, ready to go to production. And look, no disrespect. They've actually done a good job. They've built something exactly what they would like. But as you guys know, it's a whole different story building something for the big wide world to use. So there's those things. I think if I bring it back to the advice realm, so I'm chairman of a business, McQueen Financial Group. It's about 40 staff, 8 advisors, lots of accountants. Probably the questions I'm getting asked more about are probably some of the longer term things for the industry. What does my role look like in the future? I'm a paraplanner. Where do I head? I'm an advisor. I'm 25. I don't know if I like this. What other things could I? Yeah. So it's all those career things that are harder to answer, to be honest with you. But I love that people come and ask, and and often it's actually I don't have the answer, but I say, you know what? I'm 20 years older than you, and I've still got the same questions. I don't know exactly, but you know what? You're in a great business. If you love where you work and you love your boss and you feel culturally aligned, you're better off than probably 95% of Australia right now. So don't forget that.
Are those questions around fear of loss?
I think so. I think a lot of us feel, and I reckon this is why, you've probably seen those things on social media, all the booing happening at the US graduations when the tech entrepreneurs start talking about AI and all the college grads start booing about AI. That's totally fair. I've just dropped 150 grand on a college education, which social media is telling me that's not worth anything. And I'm afraid. I think it is, mate. And again, that's that. And I would go back to that. Nothing's ever as good or as bad as it seems. So it probably isn't as bad as you think. And even, I'm seeing some new employment data coming out from the software space. And there was this big prediction that software coders were dead, developers are dead. Job ads have gone up for developers in the last 6 months. I don't know about you guys, but I look at Ensemble and Facebook groups and things around just about our industry, just to have a sticky beak. And I'm seeing constant requests for new paraplanners. I'm seeing inside Finura, like in our software business, our advice designer business, the number one question we get is we're looking for a great paraplanner who knows how to use your software. We're not, I need a new one. We're looking at in-source paraplanning.
Because I think my reflection is it's actually made us so much more productive, and we've realized how much extra stuff we were saying no to or putting off because we just didn't have capacity to do it. But now we've got a bit more capacity to do it. But there's all this other stuff we also want to do and can do. We just need the people to drive it.
Yeah, I must admit, I don't subscribe to any of the doomsday predictions around employment in white collar things. I think, look, obviously things will shift. There's no doubt about some jobs will just not be there. But good companies are not looking to get rid of good people. I assure you of that. And I think it's hard to get data for our industry about how it's growing, but the most businesses we talk to, so our predominantly the clients we serve in the IFA market probably turn over between $30 and $20 million as a guide. So in that sort of realm, they are all budgeting minimum 10% organic growth next year. Like that's huge. Like for professional services, that's pretty good. And that's on the low end. I've heard some that are in the 5 million range that are going for 20, no M&A. So that tells me they've got to queue clients out the front door, which we all expected, right? Now, who's going to be cutting back on staff when that's your trajectory?
Yeah, I think disruption is always going to happen, and it has always happened. But there's another thing that pops out the back of it, right? And
I think the hard thing, and I reckon, I think Elliot Striver's doing an awesome job with that. It's just we just need to do a better job as business leaders about communicating those stories, because unfortunately, all you see in the Fin Review is the bad stuff. Because it's never going to be front page news that a CEO predicts he's going to hire, increase hiring 10% next year. No one's going to worry about that. So I think it has to be a conscious decision by business owners to communicate their thoughts in the medium term about what staffing looks like.
And it goes back to your principles as well around business and looking after your team first, making sure that they're feeling safe and secure.
100%. Yeah. So like one of the businesses, so McQueen, as I mentioned, like we've just, we've put in place employee share schemes now, and we've just opened a window now for employees to buy shares and help them buy equity. And as I said to someone the other day, someone was worried about something. I said, do you think we'd be inviting you to buy 2% of the company if we thought your job wouldn't exist in 3 years' time? Do you think we'd do that? No, we want you here because you're an A grader and we want you with us as long as you can be. So I sort of feel, let's focus on some of that and start sending some signals to our staff that whilst we can't predict the future, there are things we'd like to do for your career that means that should give you the comfort that if you keep performing, you will always have a role here.
So what is your prediction for the future, Pete?
in business or life? Or
No, the lottery numbers.
In the industry,
soccer is going to beat the USA.
Oh God, I hope so. Wouldn't that be so sweet? Both my brothers-in-law are over there for the game, so I hope for their sake they do win and give the US taste their own medicine. I think. I'll tell you what. I actually let's talk about the industry. I think the banks are back. I think it's happening. I think banks going to be back in wealth management in a big way. I know we always suspected probably, but if you read the tea leaves, for me, the minute it cemented it for me was the minute the negative gearing changes came in, the banks have probably gone, shit, we need new revenue streams now. Now, where else can a bank go other than wealth management? I'm curious. I don't really know, but I think that's happening. Everyone might think that's a really bad thing. I'm not so sure. I think it could be a good thing in the sense that I've written about it a lot. I think we're quite capital starved as an industry, so I'm a bit for potentially a bit more capital coming in. If it creates new roles, new advice capability. Look, we can't make the same mistakes of the past. I don't think that's a given, but I think broadly maybe not a bad thing. So that for me is a given. I still feel we're going to have a lot of industry consolidation though. So I feel, I think it's less platforms, less tech players. I think the industry is going to flatten a bit, on that side too. And I still see the IFA market expanding even more than it is right now. That's my gut feel with everything. I'm just hearing a lot, and I just feel now that the IFA market it's flipped the other way, right? It's all more predominant IFA. It's become more the norm, and now people are almost. It used to be a case of why would I be an IFA? Like why would I go through it? And now it's a bit more like, hey, why wouldn't I? Like what's So I just have that prediction's probably not.
It's interesting working in some other professions at the moment, which are structured exactly the opposite way. In reality, and comparing. Conscious of everyone's time, is there any advice that you would like to leave the listeners with, Pete?
Yeah, I would just reinforce the one I said at the end, that things are never as bad or as good as they seem. Everyone says, like every conference presentation I sit through, always leads with, it's never been more uncertain. And well, you know what? We've said that every year. Like I can't think of a time where it hasn't. I've never think of it. You know what? Things are pretty certain this year.
Yeah, the one I've reflected on this. The one time it was just before the GFC hit, like that.
Okay.
That August, September 2007. How good were things in August, September 2007?
Yeah, I think we just got the Costello tax changes to super, all these incentives to throw money in. Yeah, a lot of things were lining up really nicely. Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe the calm was before the storm. No, so look, I think the advice is definitely around that the world is getting more reactive, more dynamic. This is just the way how things are going to be. So I think if you don't like that environment, then I think you need to choose wisely your career path, because this is probably not the industry for you, I would say. Conversely, I think as an industry, we have so much untapped potential. We are so young and immature, yet we've got everything going for us that no other sector in Australia has. I said to my wife when we started Finura, I said, look, I think tech's a good theme. Fin services, embedded growth of minimum 15% every year, if not more, depending on how things play out. Find me another sector that's got those tailwinds and yet does it pretty mediocre, my opinion. So I would encourage people who are in this industry but maybe feeling a little disengaged for whatever reason, their job, whatever, to stick with it, because I think there's a wonderful long-term career in this sector. Versus perhaps some other industries like mining and other things, which might look a bit more attractive currently, but maybe don't have the same long-term potential. That's probably just and that's why I'm here.
Fantastic. Peter, thanks so much for coming on. If somebody wants to continue this conversation with you directly, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Just hit me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty responsive on the DMs. So yeah, go for your life. Love to hear from you.
Thanks so much for making the time, Peter. And thank you everyone for listening this week. Have a great week.